Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of I Bleeping Love Packaging. I'm here with Terry Ameno, who's currently at Buffalo Games, and I'm very excited to talk to him about his experience both at Mattel and at Buffalo Games, and anything else that Terry wants to talk about is going to be great. And yeah, Terry, you want to introduce yourself and kind of what you do?
Thanks, AJ. Really appreciate you bringing me on here. Looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, Perry Amino, 25 years pretty much in the packaging industry, pretty much toys. That's where I've been. That's what I like to do. It's kind of the passions. Started out at Fisher Price. Was there a long, long time. Pretty much every category at Fisher Price worked on, from infant toys up to Power Wheels to Thomas and Friends to everything they did. I worked on it at one point or another, so it was a lot of fun. Currently now at Buffalo Games, which is awesome as well. Different animal though, a little more older age stuff. I'm on more of the tween, like the East Point stuff. So think can jam, cornhole boards, table hockey, that kind of stuff. So, but it's a blast. It's a lot of fun. Get a chance to be creative and yeah, generate some nice packaging. So.
Awesome. And so was Mattel your first gig as a designer, or did you work start somewhere else?
Yeah, I started out doing catalog work. The name of the company at the time was Landmark Direct, and they did everything from like warehouse supplies to office supplies to surgical supplies. So I would spend 8 hours a day just clipping and silhouetting. It could be shopping carts, ladders to skeletons, everything. So it got pretty good with the pen tool.
Yeah, pen tool is like my nightmare, so I'm glad
Yeah,
that
no,
you're
I'm
good at it.
very fast at it now.
Yeah,
Can cruise. So
yeah.
they got all those new AI tools that help you isolate things. So it's almost cheating now because you can just go around and grab stuff really quick. But I don't know. Sometimes I think it's just easier for me to just grab a pen and just go around it because I've just got some skills when it comes to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And how did you kind of get your way into the toy and games industry? Obviously, there was probably a posting at some point. And did you know you wanted to do toy and games?
No, I knew I wanted to do packaging. I always loved packaging, but I had no idea where to even start. And I was at a Damon College. They did these annual portfolio reviews, and I went there. My wife, girlfriend at the time, she was just pushing me. She go do this, go do this, and I was like, well, okay, and it did, and it paid out because there was I met a man there named Randy Edgington who was working at Fisher Price. He saw my work. I had packaging in my portfolio at the time, and I don't know how many people had a lot of packaging in the portfolio. I knew I wanted to do that, so I had a lot in there. And he worked obviously in packaging and toys, and it took a little bit. I called him, but then I got into some freelance. I was freelancing about maybe 5 years, and then full time position opened up, and I was there about 20 more years. So, but yeah, but definitely packaging has always been important to me as far as a designer goes. There's something about a box, something about a package. You're creating something, right? It's not just like a flat two-dimensional piece. It's probably the closest form of graphic design you can get to like industrial design where you're actually making a thing. And I love the collaboration with working with structural engineers. It can make any good structural engineer can make anything happen. You could just tell them, and it's amazing what you can do out of cardboard. So
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, I've been saying Mattel, but you were at Fisher Price. Fisher Price is a subsidiary of Mattel now. Was it a subsidiary when you first started? I don't remember when they picked that up.
they used to be owned, I believe, by Quaker Oats or something like that. And then they were under Mattel the whole time I was
Yeah.
there.
Did you feel like it was two separate teams, or did you guys ever collab? Like, did it feel like Fisher Price was kind of its own little, because it's in East Aurora, right?
Yeah.
And so did you feel like it was totally separate from like the LA office or the New York office? I think there was a New York one at one point.
There was a New York office there at Fisher Price, and then I was in the East Aurora office. I mean, Mattel, they owned it, but I think they did a pretty good job. I mean, they were obviously the parent company, but they did a good job. They let Fisher Price be the experts where they needed to be the experts, and Mattel was the experts where they needed to be experts. So I think in the end, it was a pretty good partnership. Things changed over 20 years. Obviously, the amount of involvement that people had and things changed, but I would say it was a very good experience. I have nothing to say other than that. Like nothing ill will, nothing bad. It was a good partnership.
Yeah. It kind of sounds a little bit like I'm from Hasbro, from the blue side versus the red side, right? And it sounds similar to how Hasbro handles Wizards of the Coast, where they kind of like let Wizards of the Coast do their own thing. It's a subsidiary, but it really kind of like Magic and D&D kind of do their own stuff. They don't really interfere, and because they know that what they're doing, right? So
Yeah, I mean, my Fisher Price is the experts when it comes to all of the infant toys. They got a play lab there and everything. They do it right. and Mattel was aware of that. So it was a fantastic partnership.
Yeah, and I've heard great things about that office too. I had a coworker at Love Every who used to work in the toy lab over at Fisher Price. Gretchen. I don't know if you ever crossed paths with Gretchen. Yep. Yep.
Absolutely.
So she was great. She was like she ran the toy testing at Love Every, so she came right over from Mattel or from Fisher Price and set up very similar testing facility. I'm assuming probably to what you guys had there. And she loved it. So let's dig a little bit into let's talk about Buffalo Games too, because we talked a lot about Fisher Price. What do you think the difference is between working at somewhere like Fisher Price versus working at somewhere like Buffalo Games? What kind of is there a difference between the two companies?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It probably just has to do, and from my vantage point when I'm working, I probably just um, maybe just resource. I mean, obviously Fisher Price got a lot of different resources at your disposal, whereas Buffalo Games, it's fantastic, but you wear a little more hats than you do. At Fisher Price, for instance, if I wanted a photo taken, I would walk across the parking lot to the photo studio and shoot. Where at Buffalo Games, if I need some photo shot, I'm doing a little more of the legwork, booking time at a studio around, and shooting it myself, or you know different things. It's a little more difficult in that regard, but it's also more nimble because it's a smaller team, so it moves a lot quicker. So it's got its positives, but it's got its challenges in certain areas. But in the end, it's funny because out of all that, the work is still the same. Creativity is still the same. And I would say when I was at Fisher Price, I would say I worked with some of the most creative people on the planet, and I would say that's the same thing here. I'm working with some of the most creative people on the planet. So a lot of talent to go around.
Yeah. And do you feel like you have a little bit more creative freedom? Because I'm assuming you're probably a smaller team. Is it just it's just you, right?
No, there is a team. There's a whole team. There's different segments. Like there's the Buffalo Games is the little puzzle area, which I am not really involved in much at all. And then they do toys, and then they do games. So under my area that I'm under, I would probably say I definitely have more control over what goes on. Less levels of leadership, all that stuff. So decisions are made faster and all that. Yeah. So it's
A
faster.
little bit less red tape, probably, right?
Yeah, yeah. You can move when you need to move. It's a bit refreshing.
Yeah, and I saw your post recently on LinkedIn where you showed the shelf. And was that at Target or Walmart or one of the retailers with all the East Point stuff?
That was a Target. We launched for spring. We rebranded all the East Point spring outdoor items for Target. This new premium, we're calling it East Point Pro. Nice premium look, white box. Really, it looks nice on shelf. As always, anytime you can get something that pops on shelf, give yourself a little distance, a little space, a little breathing room from something else. It's always helpful. And in that sporting goods aisle, there tends to be, as the toy aisle is, tends to be a little busy. So if you can do something to cause a little disruption, be a little cleaner, it works out well. It's like if everybody's zigging, it's better off to zag, right? You do want to be a little different than everybody else. And
I think that it's interesting too because when you posted that, it was normally I feel like when you see a lot of outdoor stuff, it's the box is like full color. It's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of like photography outside. There's a lot of like busy graphics on it. And the East Point stuff that you guys recently released is like really clean. There's a lot of white space on the box, which I think some marketers I've worked in the past are like, oh, you have white space, put call outs, put something, put like, crazy amounts of information on there. But it can get overwhelming, I think, sometimes for the customer. And I think that what you guys are doing with the cleaner white look definitely is different than in the shelf. And it creates a nice billboard for you guys almost.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's always a challenge. That's the challenge of the job, really, is the balance of communication versus the balance of trying to keep it clean. And that's where expertise kind of comes in, and working on stuff and know kind of what you're doing, and not just putting every single selling point under the sun on the front of the box, and trying to keep it more organized. The hierarchy of communication and branding and all that comes into play. But yeah, keeping it clean, and this was definitely helps a lot compared to what it could have been, and what some of the other brands are looking like when they get a little bit overdone and overcooked.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the 520 or 5-10-20 rule? Because I kind of feel like that is very applicable to what this project was. And can you kind of explain what that is and what that means for when you're designing?
Yeah, absolutely. So the 5-10-20 rule is something I kind of go by anytime I start a project, where it's just a hierarchy of distance. So, you know, everything you're designing from a packaging standpoint needs to work in a retail setting. I mean, unless it's obviously Amazon and it's direct to consumer, then it's a little bit different animal. But if you're talking retail packaging, it needs to work at 5 feet away, 10 feet away, and 20 feet away differently to your eye. So at 20 feet away, that's really where you're talking brand recognition. And what you want there is when you're walking down the aisle or you're turning towards an aisle, you want to be able to find the brand that you're looking for. Whatever you're using, it would be color blocking, whatever it is, it needs to pop. So therefore, consumers can find you amongst the sea of everything else. I mean, if your product doesn't pop from 20 feet away, it's not really going to pop at all. So you got to make it a win that battle. And then from 10 feet away, that's when shoppability comes in. So you want your segmentation to work. So 10 feet away, you're looking at maybe there's age grading segments, or maybe there's different platforms where this one works with this one, and maybe it's sizes, whatever that your segmentation might be. That's where you're really looking at 10 feet away. So you can really navigate where you're going. And then once you're 5 feet, you're right up on it. And that's when all the marketing stuff can really start coming into play. We start talking about features and, bullets and amounts of parts and all that. That's when shoppability really starts coming into play. 'Cause you got to win at all those levels, right? Start, if all the stuff that's possible at 5 feet away is visible from 20 feet away, you're never going to see it, and it's nuts, right? So you really got to make sure that everything wins all three at all three levels.
Do you have an example of maybe a brand that isn't East Point? Because obviously, I think you guys executed it really well with the East Point lineup this spring. Do you have another brand that you maybe used as maybe some inspiration for that, 5, 10, 20 rule that works really well?
I mean, there's a lot of brands that do it well. Some brands just do it well at the 20 level, and other ones, like if you ever go to Home Depot and you walk in there and you look at the Ryobi stuff, it is just the sea of green, right? It's really powerful. And that's really a great example of the 20 feet rule. They're just knocking it out of the park. You can't miss it. It's everywhere. The product itself is just everything's green on green on green, and it's fantastic. You could argue that they probably are losing a little bit at the 10 feet and the 5 feet distance, but I think their mass is just so big that they're they could probably get away with that. Barbie is another one, like that Barbie pink. It's just fantastic. You can't miss Barbie from a mile away in the store, right? And then I think they do a pretty good job when you're walking in there, because some of them are posable Barbies and some of them aren't. And the segmentation, they tend to do a pretty good job as well. And then if I had to pick one more, I think Leapfrog with that sea of green, they tend to win out as well. For years, I used to work on learning toys for Fisher Price, and you're always, trying to go up against the sea of green and, the sea of blue of VTech, and they do a fantastic job of just blocking that out. And even once you get in there, the shoppability is when you got those 12-foot, 16-foot runs of green, it's shoppability is always going to be a little bit of a challenge, but I think they do a pretty good job. So,
Yeah, but it's easier to draw people in when they know that color, they know that brand, they know that, like, if they're looking for Ryobi, like, you're gonna go for green, right? It's so easy to find, like, and for Barbie specifically, I just had a baby girl not too long ago, and my wife has been dragging me down the pink aisle very often, and she's still a little too young for Barbie, but she's prepping me to get it ready. She's like, just remember that, like, your house is going to be pink soon. So, but it's fun to see how those brands execute for sure. So, what do you think is the difference between maybe some of the packaging you worked on at Fisher Price versus what you're working on now at Buffalo Games? Like, is it similar?
yeah, the biggest difference is in my scope at what I'm doing more at Buffalo Games and the East Point stuff is I'm doing a lot more closed box. So they're more products that require more assembly, and so it's a lot more closed box. And whereas at Fisher Price, many of the items are more open boxes, so they're more blisters. If it's a Thomas engine, you see in the engines, it's more blister cards, more L boards, that kind of stuff. But the principles are still all the same. Still all branding and communications and all that. But yeah, I would say the biggest difference itself is just the many more closed box structures versus the open box stuff. At least what I'm working on. There are facets within Buffalo Games where they have a whole line of toys, Chuckle and Roar, which fantastic products, and those are more open box, more outboard, more tray style stuff.
I think that some of the closed box stuff you worked on for Fisher Price is actually really cool though, because you have the Thomas Wooden Railway packaging, right? And I know that that's got a feature to it, but do you want to kind of talk about that packaging system and how you guys worked on that?
Yeah, it's one of the packages within my portfolio, I would say, that I'm probably the most proud of. It kind of came out of the attempt to solve for a particular problem where if you have products that are exposed and like don't have blisters over them, right? They're open box. When they are sold on Amazon, they would bag them because there's no the dust and all that. So they would bag them. So we wanted to have something that could potentially be closed, but then also when they went to retail, they could potentially be open. This particular box, and we also did not want plastic blisters. So if you're not blistering something, you got to find a way to keep the dust off, but then also be able to see it. So this box, it slides open. It's ultra premium. It's all matte finish, spot varnishes. Really looks nice. It doubles as an open box or a closed box situation. So if you're in retail settings, you can open it, you can see the engine, you can touch the wood, you can feel all that, but then it also slides shut pretty securely as well. So and it gives you that nice closed box clean display. So it's a dual purpose type situation.
Did you work pretty close with your structure designer to work on that together, or like who came up with the idea of the sliding box? I guess was it like a collab between you guys? I'm assuming you worked with the structure designer on that project.
Yeah, Shannon Mahoney was the structural engineer at the time. Fantastic. I believe she's actually working with Disney now. But yeah, it was. I believe it was my brainchild for something we did years ago on some. I don't know. I think it was a DVD project that was it had this slide open fifth panel. We never ended up working with it back then, and it never went to never actually hit the shelves. But so the thinking was we could probably do that again on this one if it worked, and it certainly did. So yeah, but she had to figure out how to make it work because it's easy to make a box that can slide out, but it's not always necessarily easy to make a box that will slide out not all the way and not come out. And so there's some pretty clever folds inside there that prevent it from coming all the way out, stopping and locking. It's pretty ingenious.
Yeah, I'll have to buy one and take it apart because I had a project that I worked on tucked in my trunk in front of me that I would grab it and show you. But I had a box that did something very similar where it would slide open and stop. And it can be kind of tricky to get all those folds and stuff in there if you're not working with like a really good manufacturer. There's a lot of tolerancing and things that you have to worry about. But it'll be interesting. Like, I'll have to go purchase one and take it apart and see if it's a similar mechanism. Just because I love those kind of like boxes with features are always the most fun, I feel like, to work on, right?
Yeah, the unboxing, if anything, is so important these days, right? It can't just be a plain old box, right? It's got to be something that just adds a little more fun to the unboxing experience, and that's what this does. So you're sliding it open. It's that experience of opening things. Just plain old boxes that just open, or blisters, which are the worst, right? You're trying to cut open a blister, or you're trying to tear that open. It's a bad experience in general. So then you can get out of the plastic idea and just go tie down. It's just so much better.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I remember when people asked me, like, when I was working at Hasbro, like, "Oh, what is your job? What do you do?" I was like, "Oh, you know when at Christmas time you can't open anything with blisters?" Like, I'd always say, "Oh, design that." Like, that was, that was always my joke. But how do you think you've seen, obviously that Thomas box is very premium, and the stuff you're doing for East Point is kind of pushed more premium now. What has kind of evolved for premium? What do you think that kind of word has changed over time over the last 20 years? Because I feel like where it was 20 years ago and where it is now might not be the same thing.
Absolutely. So I would say 20 years ago, 15 years ago, premium was about more is more, I would say, with packaging. It was a lot of, bigger boxes, a lot of plastic. We would make something feel, the buzzword was make it feel giftable. So you'd basically take the box and you'd wrap it all in plastic. And so that was really the thing is just what more you can do to the box to make it feel special. Where now, because the environmental concern is so important these days. And it's not that it wasn't important in the past, it's just that it wasn't as embraced, right? So the idea is less is more now with structures. Like you almost you don't want any plastic if you can avoid it. Smaller, less cube size is super huge. And I think the initial worry was that from a price value standpoint, people might be concerned that, wow, the box is smaller. Does it stack up price wise? And do consumers care about that? But I think consumers don't care. I think they want it. They appreciate the smaller. I think they're understanding that we live in a world where packages are shipped and the smaller is more economical. And as everything's going smaller, I think cleaner is translating over to premium now. It's like this busyness is just not what I don't think what people want.
Yeah. There's less room on that billboard to communicate a lot of things, right? I know that when I was working at Hasbro before we did that big plastic-free packaging push at one point, but I remember a lot of the times having a conversation of like, "Well, can we just make the box bigger because it's a higher price point, or we wanna like," especially if you're shipping something like Costco or like a big club store, you wanna make this like big billboard because you're walking down an aisle on a pallet as opposed to being on a shelf, right? But over time, that did definitely get smaller. especially with price increases and with tariffs and stuff going on right now. And there's the amount of money you can save by shrinking up boxes can be, kind of astronomical if you do it correctly, But yeah. So as the boxes are getting smaller for either economic sake or for sustainability sake, are you finding that you're having a harder time to figure out like what makes it to the front of the box versus the back of the box? And kind of how do you have that conversation with maybe marketing team?
That's interesting. I would say no. I would say it probably depends if you have a good marketing team, but I've always been fortunate to have a good marketing team that understands what's truly important. But yeah, I mean that does make sense. If you have less real estate, you have to kind of showcase the key features, and you got to might have to pare it down. But I think I think everybody kind of understands that. At least the folks I've been working with, like they realize what's at stake. They realize what's important. And I would say that hasn't really been a huge issue. I mean, people want things to feel premium these days, right? They want it to feel good, but you don't want to leave a premium footprint on the planet. Yeah, you want them to be smaller these days, and less truly is more. I think today.
Yeah, I think one thing that came up a lot when I was in packaging school, because I was a nerd and went to box school, but I think that something that came up a lot was our professors were always like, no matter what you make, it's going to be garbage, right? And so you have to figure out like there's a fine line between building something just for the sake of building it and also making it sustainable. You want to make sure that you find that middle ground of something where it's not just, junky junk, but you also don't want it to be so overbuilt that you're just making material for material's sake, right?
That is something that I have wrestled with for years, right? I mean, I've been working in the industry where it's like my job is literally to decorate landfill. You spend the amount of meetings and time and hours like designing packaging for retail purpose. It's like what you're feeling all proud of it. This is great. It truly is art and creativity. But then at the end of it, it's disposed of. It's recycled. It's landfill. So it is important, I think, to be mindful that the outcome is the end use, the end experience for my work is landfill. So you do have to consider that, I think, as just being a good citizen of the planet, right? That I should not make as much landfill as I can, right? So
Luckily, moving to plastic free and things, more people are likely to recycle, right? Hopefully, fingers crossed. But working on things like, with windows and blisters and all this other plastic stuff. And it's like not only is your toy plastic, but you're making all this plastic packaging and all other stuff. And it can be kind of hard to wrestle with that. I agree. It's a tough situation to be in. But at the same time, it's like you got to sell the product. So it is a fine line that you have to walk.
absolutely.
What other kinds of sustainability trends are you guys working on maybe at East Point? So you said a lot of the stuff that you just did was plastic free or minimal plastic, right? Is there initiatives within the company for that? Or is that something that you just work on because you're passionate about having to reduce plastic inside of packaging?
I'd say it's an initiative within the company. I think it's often harder to do than it sounds, right? It just seems like unless you do it for a living, it really seems easy. Well, just take the plastic out and just do that. But it's a lot more challenging than it is. There's a lot of factors and a lot of variables that go into things. So, but we are making progress. One thing that when I came on board to East Point is we have switched over a lot of the packaging to FSC certified material. And Jam, for instance, that came in. I redesigned that, and that the entire line of Can Jam products are now FSC certified. And a lot of the stuff we're doing for Costco, a lot of stuff we're doing for Target. We do what we can when we can, but the game plan is to use FSC whenever we can, whenever suppliers can source it and find it, and it makes sense.
Can you explain maybe a little bit for people who might not know what FSC is? Can you explain what FSC certification is? You don't have to give the acronym or whatever, but just like the idea of what it is.
Yeah, it basically just it proves that the paper board that you're using on the package is sourced ethically, like from a sustainable standpoint. So I don't know the entire nuances about it, but it assures there's rules about like against deforestation. So if they take a certain amount of trees, they're planting a certain amount of trees, I believe. It ensures that you're getting ethically sourced wood paper fiber versus or recycled paper fiber for your packages versus just someone that's just stripping trees down and because you don't know where you're getting your material from.
Yeah. Now, I think one of the cool things that maybe people don't realize about FSC certification that I kind of have realized over the last couple of years, me working with it too, is that if you on the FSC certification, there's a way you can look up the certification's location, right? So if someone was curious of like, oh, where's this box made? There is a little tag on there where you can search it on the FSC website and say, hey, like this manufacturer is FSC certified, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Have you done anything with like how to recycle or any other kinds of like recycling logos in the past or currently?
Yeah, I've had experience using them in the past. It's a big Walmart initiative a number of years ago where everything that they put in the store, and I believe they still do quite a bit. I don't know if it's mandated or not, but a lot of product in there has that how to recycle. It gives you all the rules and lets you know the different parts that are recyclable. I think in today's day and age, it isn't so much that the amount of recyclability of a package is more about the facilities in your area, whether or not they can actually recycle things or not. So you can generate a package that's made out of completely recyclable fiber, recyclable plastic, all this stuff. But if the facilities in those areas can't recycle it, that's where I think the problem is, or the hiccup is in the whole chain. Is like, can your town actually truly recycle it, or are they just putting them in the landfill anyways?
Yeah, yeah, there was a recent article, I think, about Starbucks going to polypropylene, cups as opposed to doing other kinds of plastic. I don't know what they were doing before, but the big thing was like, "Hey, we can recycle this certification on it." And it's like, well, where I'm at, which is in Oneida, New York, which is a little town, middle of nowhere, they don't take polypropylene in the recycling, right? So it's like there's certain materials that, yeah, that's great that you can recycle it, but like you're saying, if the MRF doesn't take it, it's almost a greenwash as opposed to actually being a real recycling ability, right? So let's take a pivot. Let's talk about AI. Where have you used AI in any packaging yet, or are you kind of like gearing up for it, or is it kind of like a no go zone for you?
AI is one of those tough subjects, right? Because it's like I find people either love it or they hate it. So I fall into the camp where I think AI is a fantastic tool. I think it's great. I think it helps speed things up, and I've been using it a lot. I've been using it whenever I can. And one thing that it really does is it helps you move quick with photography. You can render lifestyle photography faster than I could hold a photo shoot on a beach. The variables in that are very difficult, especially when I'm in Buffalo and it's January and you got to shoot something outside. I
Yeah.
mean, it's difficult. What are you doing? You're going to get on a plane, you got to fly, the logistics in it. The ability to render things and then work with a photographer that gets it, right? That totally understands it. So we'll render some beautiful lifestyle photography, but then we'll shoot product directly in place and strip it in and it looks seamless and it works. So I've been using it wherever and whenever I can. It's a fantastic tool, but I think it's only as good as the prompting. And that's like the most important part in AI is the prompting, which isn't too unlike art directing. That's where I like it. I always saw myself more as an art director than an actual designer. I'm not much of an illustrator. I'm not going to draw anything that would make its way onto a final package. I would always work with different artists and different photographers and direct them to do this and change that. And the prompting is very similar to that. I can show AI a sketch I've done. I can show it a layout that I've done. I can show it different things and get it to create something that I need. And I've been using it quite a bit.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to talk about the way of being like an art director with it because I think that a lot of people are worried about AI being like, "Oh, well, we're gonna strip away all the people who work on graphics and all this other stuff." And I don't think that the nuance is there, and I don't think it's gonna be there for a while. I've worked with some marketers in the past who are like, "Oh, this is what I want," but they don't really know what they want, and they can't really describe it, and you have to be able to describe it to a T in order to get what you want out of it, right? And I think that that's kind of where the art side of it takes place with the prompting or whatever you wanna call it, that you really are not gonna get a good looking thing without telling it in words like an art director.
Exactly. That's exactly the tool that I use it for. You can just type in, give me a package for this product, and it'll do that, but it won't be good. It would look very boring, no life to it, no real design. It gets to be a tool when you know how to art direct. So you have to have some creativity, you have to have some design sense. And that's really where it shines for me. And it's nice for versioning, right? So like if I design a package and I'm feeling like, yeah, this is nice, but then boy, how does it look in a few different color schemes? Well, I could just generate that. It's basically a sketchbook for me when it comes to that. I can prompt my ideas. it'll sketch them out for me, and it just makes it move a lot quicker.
Yeah, I've used it kinda like there's a philosophy of, like, the rubber duck in coding or whatever, where you need something to kinda talk to, like, get your ideas out so that you can kind of move on to the next thing in your brain, right? That's what I use it for a lot is, like, either a notebook or to just, like, ideate. I probably wouldn't at least I haven't yet. I haven't used it for any final designs yet, but I've used it for a lot of, like, FPO, a lot of, like, concepting, and a lot of things like that where you kinda need to get an idea out of your head and somewhere, and it's very quick at that. Okay, so let's do some like fun little rapid fire close stuff, and then we can kind of like wrap this up. And favorite package you've worked on, and one that you kind of wish you had more time to work on.
Favorite one, I'll give you two. It's the Thomas and Friends wooden railway line. Just I loved it. Probably my favorite one of all time. And then the second favorite one would be Little People, collectors, Buffalo Bills stuff we did. Major Bills fans, so it was just awesome to be able to work on that. And it was all the proceeds benefited Children's Hospital here in Buffalo, and it was just nice to be part of that. So definitely those two, Thomas and Bills, can't go wrong.
What is a packaging trend that you're currently tired of? What do you think something that's been being overdone?
Overdone. Yeah, okay. I think calling out plastic-free packaging, I don't know, I wouldn't say it's greenwashing, but I feel like just do it and don't get the credit. You don't gotta say it. That kind of, and maybe it's starting to die off because of greenwashing laws and all that, I don't know, but there's a lot of that plastic-free packaging claims on packaging now, and I would just assume just do it and stop saying it.
Yeah, I agree. There was when I was working on the plastic free stuff at Hasbro, they had a little plastic free logo they put on everything, and it said plastic free, and then there was a little asterisk that said like except for tape and glue. And it's like, guys, like at that point, just don't put the logo on there. You know, it's like if you make exemptions for this for your call out, like just take a step back. You know, what do you think one brand is that people should study if they want to get into toy packaging? Doesn't have to be a toy brand, but like from a branding standpoint.
From a branding standpoint, what they should study to get into toy packaging.
Well, so like, okay, so let me reword it because it's kind of a weird, funky question. But my thought is like we talked about earlier the Ryobi Wall of Green, right? But what kind of like toy brand do you think people or other brand that people should take a look at to be inspired by for packaging?
So if I had to say that, I mean, it might be a plug for, Buffalo Games and people I'm working with, but sometimes the smaller guys are doing really cool stuff. Like the Chuckle and Roar packaging, the designer on it is Luis Diaz, and I think this stuff's beautiful. It's different than what you would normally expect from even from a branding perspective. It's just different, I think. And I like what it's doing. It's almost takes its cues maybe a little more from like a boutique, toy store kind of feel on some of the stuff, but yet you find it at mass, you find it at Target. It's just nice. Yeah, you can go the easy answer to that one is, yeah, you could say, "We'll go to, like, Barbie and look at the pink wall," and, they're obviously crushing it. Look at the Hot Wheels and how consistent they are with all their packaging. And that you can, and those are probably fantastic examples also, but I think when you go and you try to find the smaller players in it, that are you do find some really charming and beautiful takes on packaging that are just different than what the big companies are doing. Big companies are fantastic in it goes back to that 20 feet away, right? They're doing a great job at that. I feel sometimes when you're at that 5 foot away, maybe they're not as creative as they could be. Where I think what Chuckle and Roar is doing and what Luis is doing and the team, they're doing a great job at keeping that 5 foot away when you're looking at it on shelf. It's really interesting. It's just different and refreshing.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Awesome. Terry, where can people get a hold of you? Where can they follow you? I know you got a lot of LinkedIn posts. Yeah.
Yeah, LinkedIn. I mean, I'm always happy to connect. Anybody on LinkedIn wants to connect, feel free. I'm posting semi regularly. I kind of comes in waves. Sometimes you get too busy with work, so you can't post, right?
Yeah, I like following your stuff on LinkedIn because I feel like you're posting a lot of stuff that's about like creative and packaging. And so if people are into like packaging or leadership things, like I feel like you do a really good job of getting people in the loop on that kind of subject. Cool, man. That's it. We did it. End of the episode. Thanks for joining on I Believe in Love Packaging, and I really appreciate it. This has been really insightful. I think that I'm really excited to go out and check out the Buffalo Game stuff, the East Point stuff, Chuckle and Roar. I'm really excited to go check it out, and I'm going to buy a Thomas box and figure out how that sliding mechanism was done because I need to use it probably at some point. So, very good job.
It's surprisingly simple, but,
Yeah.
you'll get into, like, "That's all it is?" But
Yeah.
it's really, I mean, it really is kinda cool.
Cool, man. Awesome. Thank you for coming on. I'll put your LinkedIn in the show notes so people can get a hold of you if they want to or follow you. And yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you again for listening to another episode of I Bleeping Love Packaging, the podcast for people who bleeping love packaging. And for those who just don't know it yet, sorry if there's a little bit of noise in the background. My 3D printer is going. My apologies. This week's episode's code is going to be train. So put a little train emoji in the comments or send me a train emoji or put the word train. You don't have to send an emoji. It's fine. And I'll send you guys a sticker pack. And I'm a little bit lax still on sending them. I have a stack of letters that I need to send out. So my apologies. I got to get stamps. But I will get those out as soon as I can. So thank you again for listening, and I'll see you next week.